The events industry is turning to virtual events to face the crisis generated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the massive cancellation of physical events. Events Case wanted to support the industry by doing what it does best, putting technology at the forefront. You can now run virtual or hybrid events in minutes. There are no delays and no technical complications as we offer top-notch customer support along the way. With the new Smart TV interface in Events Case's Agenda module for both the web and the event app, event participants can access different virtual sessions with ease. As the event organizer, you simply need to add the link of your favorite streaming or video conference supplier within each session. Adding a link enables the play button for each session. Interaction amongst online attendees is also possible since the Events Case platform supports Q&A, chat and surveys in real time. Albeit from a distance, networking is still fully supported within Events Case through the new video link function in our one-to-one meeting scheduler, as well as through private messages, news feeds and forums. Events Case is an easy-to-use, global, modular, multi-language and secure event management software. Discover all our products at www.eventscase.com.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Event Tech Talk Show. As a quick reminder, if you have missed or want to check the vast back catalogue of Season 1 that we have now on demand, you can check them out on all the major podcasting networks, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. Or we have a dedicated place for them on the Event Tech Live website actually, but we have a dedicated URL and domain for that, which is eventtechtalks.com. So you can hit that into your search bar, go direct to the last 14 episodes, because this is episode 15 now, and listen or watch any of those on demand. And we have now launched registration for Event Tech Live 2021 London. After our last event had to go virtual, this will be the next opportunity we have to bring people together in person. So we have a whole week of the event, which spans the 1st of November to the 5th. So we have 5 whole digital days, and that is interspersed with 2 physical days across the 3rd and the 4th. So no matter whether you are remote or physical, you'll be able to access all of the content that we have. So the 1st and 2nd day are 2 full days of live stream of content from speakers all around the world. We're just about to announce the first half of the agenda over the next couple of days. The 3rd and the 4th, all of the content, we have 4 stages at the event, will be broadcast online. So still, if you're remote, no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to access all of that content. And then the 5th day will be some more exciting virtual live stream content back out to everybody who wants to watch it remotely. And then after that, it'll all be hosted on demand, free of charge on eventtechlive.com. So today's podcast, or today's episode, shall we say, I have 2 very special guests joining me to talk about the possibilities and the ability to generate leads using virtual events. So joining me on today's episode is Stuart Mitchell of Catch the Mice and Stas Zaslavsky, I think I pronounced that correct, of VII Events. Stas, Stuart, welcome to today's episode.
Hi, Adam. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having us on your show today.
No, thank you, mate. Yeah, thank you, first of all, Stas, for making the time to come on. I know it's late where you are now, and Stuart, you're in the UK, so I'm not going to thank you for joining me because it's like, well. Stas, Stuart, I want to give the opportunity to you both to introduce yourselves and tell the viewers and also the listeners a little bit more about both of your background in the events industry and what you're up to now. So, Stas, let's start with you, mate.
Definitely, thank you. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started back in 2007, opening a digital marketing company. Since then, I opened several successful businesses worldwide. And my latest startup, that's why I'm here today, is VAI Events, a 3D virtual and hybrid events platform that helps create incredible experience for attendees.
Amazing. And Stuart, you've got
I'm a veteran of this events industry. I've been around a long time. My name is Stuart Mitchell. I'm the managing director of Catch the Mice. Used to have a representation company representing beautiful hotels all over the world. And my background is operational, delivering events. However, the pandemic's changed all of that. And I now represent 2 events platforms, one being Intellego, and the other one being VII Events. We've literally just announced our partnership to help with business development and support in the UK and Ireland. And it's a pleasure to be here today to tell you a little bit more about that and how we can help.
Thank you, Stuart. So what's interesting to me is we've got one gentleman here, Stas. You're coming into the sector from a technological slant, looking to solve the problem and use technology to connect people up all around the world. Stuart, you've been in the business and industry of connecting people all around the world, and now you're helping companies like Stas connect with customers to make the best of that technology. I think it's just a super interesting dynamic of how these worlds have converged and these partnerships are forming.
The random thing here is that I actually studied electronic engineering and digital degree. I studied an electronics degree. I wasn't clever enough to do the techie stuff. I had to do all the talking and the sweet talking and do the eventy stuff.
Well, interesting, Stuart. I think that's probably the same for me. I understand it. Put a laptop in front of me and, any of the platforms that you can code in, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. You might as well have given me sand and glue to try and put something together. That's where I'm coming from. We need people, Stuart, like Stas, who totally understand that side of things to be able to realize that technology for our industry.
And I can send absolutely the opposite, because we need people, we need the event organizers, we need people who understand the event industry. And without them, we can create different technological solutions that just will not work, or will work not exactly as it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And here with Stuart, we not just work with customers, we brainstorm a lot to understand what is the need of the industry. And not just the need of the specific industry, but UK industry, because different cultures have different experiences, different language barriers that, although I speak English, it's not the same English like spoken on UK or on US, and sometimes the meaning and lost in translation. So it's really vital to have such connection with event industry professionals.
But then again, I can totally sympathise with that, Stas, because I'm what's called a northerner, and I have a very broad Yorkshire accent, and now kind of converged with a Mancunian accent as well. So I can go 40 miles one way to the left of my house and people don't understand me, mate. So I know the challenges of dialect and language. But Stas, let's start a little briefly with you. Why virtual? Why 3D? Why that type of platform in order to connect participants at an event together? Like why that route over, let's say, what we see, which is kind of a 2D environment from others? Why did you go that way?
So the story goes a little bit back to the start of the pandemic. Like I mentioned before, we had several companies in our group before the pandemic. And one of them was 1V, the other one was Triple D. Triple D is a 3D agency working with mainly architects and real estate developers. And so when the pandemic hit early on in APAC, we had customers coming in saying, you're our digital experts, what you can suggest, what you can do. And we came with idea of how the experience of the event, how the element of excitement of the event, how we can bring it on. And we immediately understood that we have vast capabilities in digital marketing and in a 3D. And we thought that giving people the storytelling element, giving people the ability to experience unique venues, unique designs, it's very crucial to their experience, to how they perceive the event, how they feel during the virtual event. And it's eventually create excitement, which lead to more engagements, which lead to more leads and business.
Yes, and that is exactly what we are here to speak about today. But I guess just very briefly before we go on to, how virtual events can be very effective for that lead generation. Stuart, you were very much embedded in, I'm very careful what I say these days. I don't want to call it the real events industry. I don't want to call it the live events industry, but you were very much embedded in physical events, right? Bringing people together pre-pandemic. Just briefly from your side of things, I know you've already touched on it slightly. How have you found that transition from physical events now to being an evangelist for virtual events? Like, how have you found it personally?
I think it's not been an evolution; it's been a revolution. It's been quite quite cathartic, but also quite petrifying, to be perfectly honest. I spent the first 6 months, like everyone else did, expecting it to be over in September 2020. Here we are in September, a year on, it's still not over. And I thought I'd be back to doing what I did before. And it wasn't until September last year that I realized, Stuart, you've got to do something completely different. So I started looking at virtual platforms, and I looked at Stas's. I was approached by a number of clients to work with me. And I have to say, Stas's platform stood out head and shoulders above everyone else's. But I'm also working with a 2D platform as well, because I understand that 2D and 3D, it's not everyone's bag to have a 3D visual experience. They want a 2D, almost more of a intuitive and easier platform to work around, and a more simple platform. But I also think there's a market, and I know there's a market for something, a very, very visually impressive toolkit, and something that will deliver outstanding visual events. So for me, I have learned the hard way. I've been on and I've sat on and been engaged with dozens of virtual events, and I know the pain that event organizers go through. I think the other thing which is worth touching on is I spent a lot of time speaking to event organizers during those first 6 months, and obviously since, to see what they were doing. Most of my business came from the smaller agencies, because I hadn't delved into the digital world before the pandemic. So it was those agencies that were giving me all of the business, that were almost the smaller micro agencies, that a lot of them still really haven't dipped their toe in the virtual water. And there's still a lot of people that haven't experienced virtual and are hoping that the real world, you called it, the kind of the in-person live event will come back, which it is. But even today, we just literally had a pop-up about 15 minutes before we started the show, just to say there'll be a notification, that recommendation to work from home, and we'll all be wearing masks again in a few weeks' time. So we've got to be wary of it, and the virtual solution that I think every real true event organizer has to have. They need to have that in their armory, of a virtual solution that sits alongside a live solution as part of their overall event strategy. Otherwise, quite honestly, it's a very expensive thing to have virtual as a backup rather than as a part of the overall strategy.
Yeah. There's a lot in there, Stuart, that I'd love to unpick. I think, just working backwards, you are absolutely right. I think it's very apparent that as a sector, although we may feel or have thought in the past that physical events were an unstoppable force, other than maybe some other things that have tragically stopped events in the past, like terrorism and other things, but they're kind of localized. They're in certain regions, never as an industry. On a whole, globally, for such a long period of time, have events never happened in a physical or face-to-face manner. We've absolutely had to rely on, great entrepreneurs like Stas and others in the sector to help us keep connecting those attendees and ultimately some or whole parts of our business alive. Without that technology in place, ultimately there would have been even no virtual events. So I think you're right. I think it's very apparent that it shouldn't be a plan B. It should be a plan A by A. It should be running in tandem. That's the way that I feel it's the safest and the best. And I know there's lots of challenges around that, about bandwidth and people, and having to organize essentially two events in tandem or for two type of different audiences and stuff. But
I'm not, don't always say the right thing, and I know that, and I'm a little bit left field sometimes. We're always talking about this hybrid thing. I think to get hybrid right is extraordinarily difficult, because if you are watching it like we are, all of us here, the three of us here in an office or in a bedroom or a kitchen, whatever, the content has to be different that you're receiving as a viewer in this environment to the content that's delivered on stage and at a live event. And those two bits of content are very difficult to get simultaneous, the same to two different audiences. So my personal view is I think there will be live events, and then they'll be nicely edited into bite-sized chunks and distributed through a view on demand as and when people want to watch it. That's my personal view, rather than this hybrid we talk about.
Stas, your view, does it align with Stuart's, or do you have a slightly different or alternative view on things?
If there's a chance, I want to take back a little bit and unpack something that Stuart said previously, then get back to hybrid events. So about the pain of the industry, I think when events been canceled just literally overnight because of the pandemic and people were afraid, scared, a lot of uncertainty, and not all that uncertainty went away, but there's still a lot of uncertainty even now. But people were afraid, a lot of event organizers, they were afraid that event tech, that our technologies, companies like mine, are here to replace them. And I must say that's the opposite. We can do nothing without the experience of seasoned event organizers. We don't have the connections and the relationships they built over years with customers. We don't have the understanding and the experience of how to produce this amazing physical in-person event, call them how do you want, and of course hybrid events. So I see that in the upcoming years, event technologists will need to understand, and the event organizers will need to understand what we need to come closer together, to collaborate more, and not fear each other. Like, we are not here to replace the industry or change it. We're here to evolve with it together, providing solutions that the industry needs.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think if there's anything to be taken away from the last 18 months, as an industry, we've been given, I think, fresh eyes at the way that we do business and the way that we connect our communities up and the way that we bring people together. And I don't think for a second when I looked at any virtual event or hybrid event did I ever think of it as a replacement for what I was doing previously. If anything, for me personally, I know some could argue that I'm probably more on the tech side than against it or resistant to it. But I saw opportunity, a huge amount of opportunity to amplify and embed myself in my community and connect that community up or connect my attendees up even more often, and maybe even take some of what we try to cram into one big silo in one big event and actually start to pick that apart and go, actually, hold on a second. There's an event for this on this course over here. Maybe it's the event tech marketing side of things, or the physical technology side of things, maybe the virtual technology side of things. And I think that's the opportunity that most have seen, is that they can actually use virtual as a way to kind of thread the narrative through the rest of the year and connect people up, and then hybrid is a way to bring people together in one big environment. Stas, I'm gonna kind of get you to bring on and share your screen, because I think it's important for people to kind of have a visual representation about your technology specifically and what they're doing. So if you want to be able to, I can't see your share screen. So if you want to share your screen.
A second, and just before that, I exactly want to do that. Stuart also spoke about Intelligo, and they have an excellent product. I really can say that I'm really lucky that Stuart is not only working solely with us, but he has another solution. This way we can together create a suite, and each event has its own breakdown, and there's a lot of different great technologies out in the market. So for each type of event, different industry, different type of engagement, there is a tool that works best for that industry or for that event. So selecting the right tool, the right technology tool for the right event is vital. And saying that, I'll demonstrate a very short demonstration of our solution, how it looks. So I'm just a second, I'm gonna share a screen now.
While Stas is doing that, for those that are tuning into this podcast in the audio format on replay, please do go and check out the video either on the Event Tech Live website or on YouTube, so you can get a representation. So Stas, tell us a little bit more about your platform and how it works.
Yes, thank you. So basically, we are recreating physical venues virtually. It can be up to our imagination, our customer imagination, or really imitate the physical venues. And we have two graphical engines. One is a 2D point and click, really simple to navigate. You have menu, you have maps here, and you just go and interact with different objects. The other one, which you can switch in a platform, is a more advanced one. Like, you can zoom 360, get a more immersive experience, It worked the same way from tablet, desktop, and mobile. This is one event with British Society and Kasapi. They did a medical event with us. It was amazing. We are going for a second one soon. This is a different event, so you see it looks different. It brings a different brand story. And even sometimes, in case of Stratasys, they are doing 3D printers. It includes their machinery. Like you can almost touch it, and you can even see the parts of that machinery, like displayed for you. This is our event, sales kickoff event that we did last year. So here we are in Parry. So creating this experience, creating these attachments, the emotional attachments I spoke before, the element of the storytelling and exploration. That was our idea, how we bring forward that additional engagement we looked for. Of course, there's different gamifications that we can dive separately into, but the first thing is the visual experience, because content is one of the important things, but it needs beautifully packaged into an environment that calls for interest, that creates excitement. So that's where we are coming in. This is one of our strongest suits. Of course, we focus on lead generation, which we're supposed to speak soon about, and the community model, which is very interesting and very spoken in the industry as well.
Awesome. Before we go on to kind of that, the power of the events being used as a lead generation platform, Stuart, I want to come to you just briefly on Stas's point. You know, you have a 2D platform like Intellego, then you have more of an interactive model as maybe a second step. It's interactive, kind of the way that we would expect to interact with maybe maps or other technologies like that. And then the evolution of that at VIA events, which is a fully fledged immersive platform with 3D models of people's equipment and things. I can see that being a huge cost saver for some manufacturers at some events, like maybe Farnborough International Air Show or others, where it costs a lot of money to get some of this equipment and some of these real live things in place. But this is where most people struggle. They struggle with what type of platform that they should go with, where's best suited their event. So how or what's your experience there in giving people the right advice so their event sits within the right type of platform?
I had a conversation about this actually at the Eventit show on Friday, actually up in Edinburgh when I was speaking, and one of the points was it's about the ethics of the person that's actually delivering that honest advice. Is it really honest advice, or is it dictated by the backhander? No, the retro rebates. So I think a lot of it comes into the ethics of the person, and I have to say, I hope that I stand by my word on that one. If I was trying to give any direction, and I try not to, because it's the end of the day, it's the client's decision. But I will give recommendations if I could, and I'll take a pharmaceutical client, for example, with super intelligent doctors and the consultants and surgeons. They tend to want a simple platform because they haven't been gamers all their lives, and they haven't had all the experience of playing with the tech. So I would probably say that's a simple 2D platform with them. Also, the other thing is, historically, there have been some fairly hefty price bands for an annual licenses for some of these things, and the whole pricing structure comes into play. Again, ethically, is that the right thing to do? If someone really is only streaming a piece of information and is doing a webcast as opposed to a multi-screen complicated event with breakout rooms and simultaneous broadcasts, I could sell them whatever I wanted to sell them because I'm a salesperson, but it's just not fair to do that. And I think you need to, again, ethics come into play here. I want to hold people's hands. The relationships that I've built over the last 25 years or 30 years from my career, because I'm getting old now, 30 years from my career, I don't want to throw those down the pan for being unethical, because quite frankly, my name is worth more than making a few pennies, extra pounds in my pocket, albeit I'm skint having had a year of almost no trading. But I think ethics come into play. The other thing which is really important for me, when I used to represent hotels, I turned down many hotels that wanted to work with me because they didn't deliver the service that the client was expecting. And the same thing has happened with event platforms. I'm not going to mention any names in the industry, but there are people, I've been approached by a number of platforms and I've turned them down because they don't have the same ethics and they don't understand our industry. And I'm so pleased I'm working with Stas and Intelligo because they both understand it. Stas from a techie point of view, and Intelligo are backed up. It was built by eventers, so they understand our sector, and that helps me onwardly sell it and promote it to the wider events market.
Yeah, I must admit, Stuart, I think if I was a buyer, having somebody like yourself who was partnered with two platforms that were very, very different from each other, but ultimately helping me to deliver my events, whether that be a hybrid event or a virtual event, I'd feel very comfortable with that, knowing that ultimately you're going to give me the opportunity to go with the one that suits my event best, not the one that is the only one that you have to sell them or you have to encourage them to go to. And ultimately, I would imagine that Stas and Intelligo are much more comfortable knowing that they're going to get the customers who have understood that platform is right for them coming to them at that point, rather than having to kind of unpick all of the.
I hope so.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. But it's I think it's a very clever partnership between all three parties, if I'm honest. In if a 2D platform isn't right, then Stas and VII events is the better option for them, and vice versa. And Stuart, you're in a kind of hopefully a no-lose situation. They will ultimately go with one, and hopefully you can find as much work for both of them as each other. So I think it's a very clever way to present the technology, and Stuart, having all your experience within events and talking event language and understanding the trials and tribulations of actually delivering physical events as well, can be that partner between everybody that's kind of there, all in the mix. Stas, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to say something, to add something on a part of the integration between platforms. So we had an experience of working, I will not name names, but we worked with different platforms across where there was an integration between 2D platform and our 3D engine. And you can leverage much more features and much more, creating much more deeper experience this way. It, of course, it depends on the event in the breakdown and the willingness of those competing platforms to collaborate. We are always looking for best for the customers, and we are not afraid to collaborate with our peers. Secondly, about ethics, and it's really important for me as well. So I want to share a short story about a customer, very big enterprise customer, who came to us and literally wanted to make a small event for 80 people with 2 3D rooms, reception and auditorium. And then in the auditorium, the session even weren't streamed live there. There just was a link for Zoom or Teams. And I told him, like, it's a waste of your resources. You can do with just simple landing page and use Zoom or Teams alone. You don't need this whole bombastic experience to host 80 people. It just doesn't worth the effort for you. You'll do much better having something different. So being honest, and that customer return later on for us with a bigger event, like what we are used to do. Our events are between 1,000, 2,000 people. And the biggest event we done was with 50,000 people. So when he returned, he was happy and he trusted me more. And I felt good about myself because I provided real value.
Bombastic. That is not a word I have heard in a long time. I feel like that would be a good name for a virtual event platform. I'm going to trademark it so nobody can use.
Very fast because new platforms coming up on a daily basis.
So we're here. We are actually nearly 30 minutes into this episode, and we actually haven't still gotten to the thing that we're here to talk about, which is lead generation strategies. And I think it's a really, really interesting part of the conversation of hybrid and virtual events, because ultimately that is the mechanism of most event, isn't it? It's whether it's an individual, you're going to an event to try and generate leads, create an increase in your network, you're a company sponsoring or exhibiting at an event, or you're even the organizer at some point in the line, even if it's your own event that you are organizing. Underlying, it's probably about lead generation or customer support and customer care. So tell me, I'm going to fire the answer out to you. Why are virtual or hybrid events now such effective ways of generating leads as organizers and businesses? What's your own opinions on that? And Stuart, I'm maybe going to jump to you first as the kind of the organizer / supplier side of things before we come to Stas.
I'll try and keep this as succinct as possible. I think it's the reach. the reach of people you can get. Your market's window has suddenly become become global. So you can open your events to a lot more people. You can get a wider traction in that respect. You then get, as long as your event is designed well, you can actually structure your content to actually get engaging questions with polls and answers, so you get feedback from your client base, which you can then follow up on to see if someone's interested. And thirdly, it's the analytics. It's the analytics of everything you touch, everything you click, everywhere you access, what your program is, what your agenda, your personalized calendar, diary is all there as extra data. And it's data. And I think the wizards of the world in the boardroom will be those data kids that can actually manage that data effectively and capitalize on it.
And Stas, what about yourself?
As Stuart said, very many interesting talking points. I will not repeat them, but I give some example for the audience. We had a customer that usually was working all year around to create one event for 5 days in Las Vegas, and this event usually will bring 4,000 to 5,000 people yearly to this event, the customer event. And moving virtual for them, they've been able to bring 20,000 people. Next year, they're planning to do a hybrid event. So their reach is significantly grows. And even if they're not mastering fully the capabilities of the analytics and all the platform capabilities that they can leverage it to deliver more leads, the sheer amount of traffic of the attendees that are joined up, and if you take a percentage that it converts into a possible deals, that by itself, the bigger the audience, the bigger the opportunity.
I'm going to pose a very true but difficult question to you both, because I'm not in the world of selling virtual events as an opportunity to generate leads. That's not true. I am, but I'm not the one selling the platform. There are many exhibitors, many event organizers actually that have had real trouble or struggle generating the value that they deem that they need out an event. Exhibition organizers as a point in call, it's hard to scale the value of a virtual event in the same way that it maybe is the ability to scale a physical event, because it's about square meters and it's very real. And obviously, the more space that you take in a more venue, the just more direct cost there is. That's easy for everybody to work out. And then from a exhibitor perspective, many have often struggled with how to get the most out of an event. Maybe their focus is one-to-one meetings, or card hold data like email addresses and telephone numbers and things like that. And I've heard very mixed and varying things across the board. Some absolutely loving virtual or those hybrid events as ways to leverage and maximize the ROI or the lead generation out of the events. Others, on the other hand, saying, I'm never touching this with a barge pole ever again because I just couldn't get any value out of it. What do you say to that? Do you experience yourselves maybe, or have you got any advice on the better ways to go around actually leveraging those leads out of an event versus others? Have you seen any bad practice? Can you share any thoughts on that as to why or how those people could overcome those challenges?
Absolutely. This is an excellent question. It has different layers of answers. So I'll start from the beginning. There are a lot of great tech out there. First of all technology companies, including myself, we need constantly improve, hear feedback, and evolve. That's our goal as technological solutions, is to listen to the industry and improve. Secondly, what I do believe is happening, there is a lot of great platforms, not just myself, of course. I'm saying there are many great solutions, but many of them even haven't reached their full potential because customers, they receive a training, they don't fully understand the flow of virtual or hybrid events, how to control the audience, how to maximize the lead generation process. And they ending up with either bad experience or a limited understanding of how this is done right. That's why, first of all, I saw on the industry a lot of companies, a lot of event companies now hiring digital marketeers to help them out understanding how to turn that data, how to work with different automation processes to generate leads. But I think the most top reason for unsuccessful or not happy results, it's not a fault with a specific tech platform. Of course, there might be such cases, but in most cases, it's not proper misuse, or not proper planning, and that's why it leads to some bad results.
I totally agree with that. I think if you go to any trade show in the world, you can see people that are having a busy stand, engaging with customers walking past, that have pre-organized their meetings, that have done the homework, they know who's coming, that have invited specific guests to onto their stand, that have been proactive in grabbing people off the aisles in the old-fashioned way. And people aren't doing that in the digital world. Swapcard looked after Confex. I spent weeks before Confex organizing my diary, and I had a busy show. Footfall was down. Don't get me wrong, footfall was down. And that's where the digital marketers come in, as Stas said, to optimize the volumes at the trade show. But if you sit on your laptop in your old stand, ignoring one, or drinking coffee, chatting with your colleague with a hangover from the night before's party, that's not the best way to get return on your investment. It just doesn't work that way. It's the same with digital. And I'm afraid, the platform can't be blamed for that. It's down to poor management of the content.
Yeah,
that's really quite harsh, isn't it? But that's true.
No, I think it's the truth, Stuart. I think to Stas's point, for some events, it probably is very much down to poor planning. Have they targeted the right type of people to come in? Have they explained both the benefits and the way that they get the most out of that experience from an individual perspective? Have they put enough emphasis on the value of actually connecting with those people that are helping to fund the event, whether that be a supplier, a sponsor, or things like that? Ultimately, events for both sides are about the efficiencies of creating relationships and doing business, right? You can meet a lot of people over a very short period of time around a very, very focused piece of content or idea or industry. And the value there is doing all of that in a very, very short period of time. It's very time efficient. And that should be the same for virtual or physical events. But maybe as Stas says, maybe some events and some experiences become down to bad planning. I would caveat that, though, that my own opinion is sometimes not necessarily the person executing on that, but the amount of time that we've actually had with this business type, right? We've got to remember, virtual events, although some would argue have been something around for over a decade now, and that's true in broadcast sense. Yes, in terms of broadcasting an event out to a remote audience, that's been done for well over a decade. But in terms of utilizing the tools and the technology that allow them to take that to the next step of a business level, that's brand new.
Absolutely.
That really is. So
different skill set.
Yeah, on the event management side, I think we've got to give people a little bit longer to kind of get those planning processes down. Technology, the same. I think there's been a period of time of learning, of iteration, of some mice in the cogs that have, fallen over at certain key points in time. Hey, EventTech Live US, not that many months ago, we had Vimeo go down on us hours before our event was about to go live. These are the real world things that happen. So there's a sprinkling of that, and I totally agree with that. And again, I think virtual events from a business activity, again, 18 months is not a long time for many people, for many salespeople or marketing people to get their head around what needs to go into it in order to get the results out of it. If I'm honest, I think there's very much been of an opinion that it's a case of, we're going to be able to turn up to these events. All of these people are going to rush to want to book meetings with us. We're not going to have to do anything because we're amazing. We've got such an amazing product, or the latest generation in this. They're going to want to book meetings with us and sign checks, and then come to it. And actually, that's not the way that it works. It does, like Stuart, like you've taken, just as any sales job or outreach job, it takes a lot of groundwork and build the foundations to get the results at the point of the event that you want. So I think I agree with you. I think it's probably a combination of all three of those things that have maybe left some people with, this is not right, this is not worth the investment in time and money. I guess let's talk a little bit about that then. Like, as well as the challenge, what are the major challenges that you think are for event organizers in planning these events because that's part of that three mix, right? They've maybe not had enough time or not enough experience. Are there other challenges that you think that event organisers are facing in order to create effective virtual and physical events outside of that, Stas?
Definitely, I can share a very funny experience that happened time after time when we do first-time customers. Instead of focusing on the strategy of how they're gonna prepare the strategy of advertising, the strategy of which attendees you should bring, you spoke about it briefly. It's really vital to bring the right attendees, because you can bring 10,000 people who will be not relevant to your event. They'll just come for some gifts that you're gonna share during the event, like prizes. So instead of focusing on the right stuff, what many companies, many event organizers doing, they're drilling down very heavily into smallest details of the features and how they work in a platform, like how the exact way the Q&A works, the exact way the poll works, like, and it's really important to understand the tech. But if it takes you all your time and then you didn't left with strategical planning, and they say, okay, when is your event? My event is next week. Where is the time to do marketing right? Where is the time to prepare for the event? And I'm not speaking about the content part. The content part might be very professional and ready because they know how to do it from in-person events and they used to it. I'm speaking about the process, the flow of the attendees during a virtual event, because it's not the same process when it's a hybrid event, and it's not the same process when it's in-person event. And many event organizers miss a very crucial point. The event doesn't start at the event date, and the lead generation process doesn't start post-event. What really indeed should happen is before the event, you sit on each registration, you tag it, you analyze the attendees that are registered, put them into different categories, create for them, each one for each category, a unique personalized communication based on his interest, industry, seniority, and then market exact messages that are relevant for them, creating a value for those attendees to attend, creating for them a content or potential meetings, like saying, hi Stuart, I know Stas is going to be on this event, and I know that you have both interest comments, maybe you will meet, and suggest a time based on the agenda. So there's a lot of planning that need to be done before the event. Then during the event, the second mistake is event organizers are really focused on operating the tech platform, and they usually don't take event technology support because they want to save money, they want to do it themselves, or they don't have a professional team that does that. Like there's professional companies today that help event organizers run different platforms. So they focus on running the platform instead of making connections, instead of making networking, instead of following the activities in real time, the analytics in real time of the attendees that are currently looking to have meaningful interactions with their seniors. And catching it during the event and not post-event is very vital, because after the event, we all come to the next event with different company, and we go back to our emails and we are back to our meetings. We're busy. During the event, we are here, we are present virtually or in person, and that's the time to network with us. So doing lead generation during event is vital. And of course, post-event, because it's virtual, and when I'm speaking about hybrid or virtual events alone, you can do a community model where you don't stop, you don't close the doors and or put the content to die there like a graveyard. You do semi-webinars once a week, once a month. You create networking days for the attendees. You create opportunities. You give real value. You'll get real results.
Stuart, do you have any further thoughts on what Stas
I do. I think
there?
your point earlier was very well made. It is still that we're in its infancy. People are still learning. The pandemic has been brutal for our industry. It's so sad to have seen what's happened to it. I've lost so many colleagues that have left the industry, and I've lost colleagues through, unfortunately, to mental health. That's another issue which we'll park that, but I do some work with Eventwell to try and support that. But going back to what you said, we are lacking a skill set. There are new skills that are needed. There are new technical skills that are needed. I had never heard of vMix. OBS, what's that? There are all those elements, but there is also, that the skill of being able to manipulate. Actually, no, not actually manipulate. Actually, be almost a host in your environment and direct people around, rather than worrying about this tech that could potentially fall over, because it's petrifying running a virtual event if you've never done it before. You need an expert to hold your hand and show you how to do it and how to communicate. Even before we did this sort of streaming setup, we had a little chat on mobile phone. We had a little WhatsApp group just to say, oh, everything's okay, are we ready for it? It's not difficult, but it's what you do when you run virtual events. And those people that haven't dipped the toe in need a bit of hand-holding.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, there's this, I've come to realize that when I ask people about how did you get into events, the general answer is, oh, I fell into it. And don't get me wrong, there are some amazing universities and courses out there that will teach you the fundamentals and the very important key parts of, managing an event, keeping people safe, event design and all of those things. But actually, I don't think it's till you really get yourself immersed in it and you start, lifting up the hood and getting into the nuts and bolts of putting an event and actually have that experience of putting one together, do you fundamentally understand what's involved, the logistics and the mechanisms of making a great event, whether that be virtual, hybrid or face-to-face. I think that's the same with virtual events. That's what's presented as now. I think virtual events and hybrid events will elevate our industry up to the same level as other marketing mechanisms, such as specialist SEO, specialist display adverts, networking, new forms of marketing and specialisms that are coming into massive play, such as platforms like TikTok and Instagram and all of these kind of amazing ways that we can help customers reach our audience. I think our sector is now going to be elevated to that, because the key piece that we've got that none of these other platforms have got is the ability to bring people back into the room. Actually, the only people that seem to be doing that well on any of these platforms are potentially some of the kind of the high-end blue chip brands, maybe like Adidas and Nike and those organizations that have got that ability and that reach. But they already fundamentally understand the value of bringing people face to face. From a lead generation perspective, as somebody working in media, and selling lead generation for a business, this is now another tool in my armory of another way to provide my customers the opportunity to reach my audience around a very focused way, and ultimately without the major headache of things like huge venue deposits and catering and all of those crazy things that go into, a physical
sitting on the M6 for 5 hours of it.
I've not done that for a few years, Stuart, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's 2 hours. 2 hours. Everybody's time sensitive. That's everybody involved, right? So I think the other thing from a lead generation perspective that it also presents an opportunity is for people to be able to dip themselves into other regions which would have been very costly to exercise as a physical event. I think that's one of the big doors that have been opened. We've got it on Event Tech Live this year. We've got companies from Canada, the US, Australia, Singapore, all participating in Event Tech Live London from a virtual perspective in a much more cost-effective way than would have been presented to in a physical way, for them to try the event out, for them to gauge the lead generation and the activity that they're going to get out of it, to take that next step in going, hey, yes, actually, it's now worth us taking this to the next level and investing even more in the event going forward. And I think that's the opportunity that presents many event organizers and businesses, is the ability to now utilize those types of events to gauge an audience and make smarter, wiser investments, and ultimately probably keep customers a lot longer, because they'll have had the opportunity to spend more time figuring that audience out and figuring that event out before having to, I'm just going to pick an arbitrary figure out, but let's say invest an overall £20,000 or euros into an event without really knowing much.
But that point is well made. As long as they've got a good CRM system, they've got it in a bag.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna ask you both a kind of a crystal ball moment. What do virtual events specifically look like in the next, I'm going to say 5 years, and that almost probably seems like too long considering how much they've changed over the last 18 months. But Stas, maybe as the platform provider, what do you hope to see out of virtual events in the next kind of 5 years? What did it look like?
It's really hard to guess, like you mentioned. If you've been asked 18 months ago, what is virtual events? Say, what? Virtual event? And the amount of brains, the amount of funds went to do evolving the event tech industry. is literally unprecedented. I think there is never before there was like a $1 billion company invested, and so many investments coming up in that money eventually influence even myself, although I am a bootstrap company. It creates a bigger pie for everybody. It creates a new job roles. There definitely, like 18 months ago, if you go into LinkedIn and look for virtual events expert, there was zero. And today, like, it pops in thousands, and I like click connect every day because I do want to be connected with everyone. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn. But again, it's really hard to imagine, but I do believe that if we want to give a better experience, it's not need to be only about tech. We need to understand we need to listen to experts of the industry, listen what their pains, and many of the pains coming up here that the tech is too expensive. So that need to be not just a technological development, because we can go to AR and VR and a lot of different technologies, and there are some platforms doing it now, but it need to be cost-effective solution that people can use and get benefit from. Because if it's just a cool tech, which is very expensive, like a $1 million iPhone or Tesla, and so several people will have it, but the advancement is making it affordable.
Stuart, what about yourself? Crystal ball moment. What does virtual events look like to you in the next 5 years?
Well, I've always worked with hotels and venues that provide service. It's about being in a service industry. We are an events industry. It is about service. So things like a SaaS model, I'm afraid I'm kind of so anti it. That's not my personal idea. Sorry, Stas, but it's not my personal idea of service. I actually like human service, but that costs. You know, you stay at a 5-star hotel. I worked with Mandarin Oriental. You had 2 members of staff for every paying customer. That's service, and we need to have that balance of being cost effective but providing the service for the end customer. I think the future of virtual events, it's petrifying. It's on an exponential curve. We're on a, if we talk about COVID peaks, we're on probably a third peak, and it's going to be skyrocketing. What I've seen in the short period that I've been involved is the product has improved, the stability has improved, the way that we use it has improved, and that's in realistically 9, 10 months, 12 months. So 5 years time, I personally think we will all be attending. If when we attend a virtual event, we'll be using the headset, we'll be looking around, we'll be able to see it, maybe even touch it. I don't know, that it sounds like science fiction. I have a very aging parents, and they may well tune into this, but the whole concept to them is completely alien. It's going to be alien to me in 5 years' time. If I was to teleport 5 years into the future, we're not going to recognize it. It's very exciting. And I was interviewed back in March this year, and I quoted it. It's a moment in time. It's a moment in time when people have the opportunity to jump on board this accelerator. And the longer you leave it about jumping on board, the further behind you're going to be with that. And that is my advice for anyone that's coming out of college, someone that's in the industry, that stayed in the industry. Jump in, get some support, get some free, just do some free volunteering to see how it works, because it is different to what we've done before, but it's not that different. The whole concept of delivering service is what we do. I
have to totally agree with you on the service side. I've said for the last 18 months that SaaS at the moment should mean software and a service, not software as a service. Definitely. Because I think it takes time for the sector to adjust. We've had, as you quite rightly pointed out, Stuart, we'd have a huge devastating moment in time where lots of people have lost their careers or had to transition out of the sector. It's going to take time for us to recover from that. So service and support is even more important now to help the industry get back to where it was pre-pandemic and accelerate it even further forward and utilize these types of technologies to create all those opportunities and to grow. I genuinely think we'll go through, a huge growth period over the next 5 years as an events industry. I think there is the potential that virtual events become the webinar of the modern day. I'm fearful of that in the terms of the misuse of them or the overuse of them. So we've got to be careful about that they become, because webinar became a dirty word for a very, very long time. But I think as a sector, as an industry, back to Stas's point, it's created lots of opportunity. Event technologists is now this new fostering and bubbling kind of side of the industry. And I actually think it'll become one of the most sought after roles, that the ability to understand technology and leverage it becomes very, very valuable to, I think, many organizations, whether that's understanding data, deploying a platform, managing platforms, managing other softwares and systems that integrate. That's very technical. That's probably for some large organizations, six-figure salaries plus in the events industry. That's my opinion. So I think if I was starting out my career in the event sector now, that's the direction that I'd specifically take. And I think that'll allow us to attract new talent to the sector as well. New interesting eyes, new interesting investments, new interesting platforms. I think there will be a platform out there for everybody, whether you've got a couple of $100 budget or a couple of $1 million budget, because that's just the way the world works. Some of that will come with support. But I think it's a really, really interesting and dynamic time for the sector. We've seen the appetite for live face-to-face events to come back. We're seeing the continued use of virtual as part of hybrid as well, which I think is really exciting. So for you guys, you're sitting in really interesting seats now as the platform provider and the custodian of the right choice of platform to go with, Stuart, having all your experience as well. So yeah, lead generation, I think there's a huge opportunity across the board for every business to use virtual events, either to generate more business for themselves as an event organizer or to leverage it as a marketing arm of their business to reach new customers. There's one final question that I have for you both before we wrap up. And one thing I hope for anybody watching this or to get out of this is something that helps them on a day-to-day basis. So I'm now asking my guest, is there one Chrome plugin, app, piece of technology that's helping you on a day-to-day basis do your job better or more efficiently? I'm going to give an example of one. So I'm currently using a system called Tidy Tags. TIDYTAGS. Stas, you might like this. And what that gives me the ability to do is tag people in LinkedIn within certain groups. So I can create my own tags. So it's kind of like a LinkedIn CRM. So I go to Tidy Tags once I've tagged people, and I can filter all of my connections that I've tagged by a specific type of tag. So I have an event technology tag for Stas. I have a speaker. I have a influencer and speaker tag. Is there anything like that you two can think of that you might share that might be helpful for the audience that's either watching now or listening back live? Stas, I'm going to start with you. Is there anything that you found technology app-wise, plugin-wise that's helping you?
So I want to go a little bit further. I really came by recently by a company called Event Decision. Matt runs that company. You probably know them. You interviewed him several episodes ago. And I really liked his idea of measurements of global footprint, carbon footprint that events do. I think it's very vital. All event organizers, definitely big companies, need to start using that, because we all live on planet Earth. And when it's global warming, we see daily on news what happened in New York, what happened in Germany, Britain, all over the world. It's literally insane. We're ruining the environment that we are living in. So I'm advising on Events Decision. They'll do different measurements for your event to make it less damaging the environment and more effective.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stas. Stuart, what about yourself?
Oh my goodness, I'm such a dinosaur. You've really got me, Adam. You know what? I'm still getting my head around Excel.
Has anybody actually got their head around Excel? I feel like it's one of those never-ending things that always there's something that you didn't realize it could do. No, that's not a problem.
No. I am going to give credit where credit's due, and I like to tag them on this. I bank with Lloyds Bank, and they set up a digital academy right back at actually beginning of 2020. And I've sat in those 9 months when I was twiddling my thumbs thinking, what on earth am I going to do? And they have a really phenomenal resource to be able to pull upon to tell you all of this new tech. And I would highly recommend everyone to go in and look at that. Even like a dinosaur like me, I learned so many bits of tech. I haven't embraced all of them by any means, but I've certainly dabbled with a lot of them. There is a lot of free learning skills out there which you can tap into to get into the digital world. It's not it's not them and us. It is very accessible. Sorry, Adam, over to you.
That's brilliant. I think that's the real world that we live in, isn't it? Right? That's great advice. Stas, Stuart, thank you very much for coming on to today's podcast. For those that are watching or listening, please do go and connect up with Stas and Stuart on LinkedIn. Check out catchthemice.com. Check out VII.events, which is the URL for Stas's site. And we will see you, I guess, in the next episode. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.